Okay, so right off the bat, you guys sent in some fascinating excerpts.
Yeah.
And we're diving right in
Okay.
from Texto Colado by George S. Clason.
Mhm.
And particularly, we're looking at the story of Sharunada and Hadan Gula from The Richest Man in Babylon.
Right.
Now, I think a lot of people, when they think of Babylon, they think of ancient history. But the thing is, this narrative gets at something really timeless,
Yeah.
about work, wealth, and the kind of person you become in the process.
For sure.
And that's what we're going to explore today, specifically for you, the learner.
It's so interesting how these stories, from thousands of years ago
I know.
can still have this resonance, this power.
Yeah.
You can almost forget about the
Yeah.
chariots and the ziggurats and all of that.
Yeah.
The principles underneath about how we approach our lives
Yeah.
and our work.
Yeah.
Often they stay the same.
Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this isn't just some dusty old tale, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's a chance to see some fundamental truths about success,
Mm-hmm.
but they're reflected in this compelling human journey.
Exactly.
That's what makes it so engaging.
So with that in mind, the big question that we're really wrestling with in this deep dive,
Yeah.
especially with you, the learner at the forefront, is what can we really take away? What are the real actionable insights we can glean about achieving success and really understanding the value of work from the contrasting paths of Sharunada and Hadan Gula?
Yeah.
Because it's fantastic setup. You've got Sharunada. He's the seasoned merchant prince.
Right.
He's clearly built something significant.
Yeah.
And then there's young Hadan Gula, who, well, let's just say he seems to have a very different starting point in terms of how the world works.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
We have this, individual, right?
Yeah.
Who's demonstrably created wealth and experience, and he's returning to Babylon. And then in contrast, we have this younger man who it seems has benefited from the fruits of past labor without necessarily understanding what went into it.
Yeah.
And so right away,
Yeah.
you have this tension about what it really takes to build a fulfilling life.
Exactly. And our mission here, our goal,
Yeah.
is to really unpack those key moments
What?
and those eye-opening exchanges in their story.
For sure.
We're zeroing in on how their perspectives on work either shift or stay stubbornly the same, and crucially, the role that work plays in where they end up.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. We're sifting through this narrative to bring you the most valuable insights,
Precisely.
the ones you can actually take away and ponder without feeling like you're back in school,
Right.
cramming for an exam on ancient Mesopotamia.
Exactly.
We're after those aha moments,
Yeah.
those light bulb moments.
We want to get at the essence, the core wisdom, right?
Right.
That's embedded in this story. Make it understandable.
Yeah.
Make it applicable, maybe even to your own experiences.
Right.
It's about those crucial lessons
Yeah.
without getting bogged down in all the historical details.
Okay, so let's set the scene.
Okay.
Sharunada, this successful merchant prince of Babylon, is making his way back home with his caravan. This is a man who's clearly made his mark. He's riding this fine horse. He's dressed in these rich fabrics.
Right.
You can't quite put an age on him, but what's crucial is that he's carrying this weight, this concern about the young man riding beside him.
Right. And that internal conflict in Sharunada, right?
Yeah.
It's so telling right from the get-go.
Yeah.
He's not just chaperoning this young man.
Right.
He's got this sense of responsibility, and there's this brewing worry.
Yeah.
This is Hadan Gula, the grandson of Sharunada's former partner, Arada Gula.
Right.
And Sharunada feels this deep gratitude towards the grandfather,
Yeah.
a man he clearly respected, and he wants to help the grandson find his way.
Yeah.
But, we see pretty quickly there are some, let's call them diverging values.
Yeah.
This initial discomfort in Sharunada, it hints at this core theme, the complexities of mentorship, when your fundamental beliefs are different.
Exactly. So Sharunada, he notices all this flashy jewelry that Hadan Gula is wearing.
Yeah.
And he thinks, maybe with a bit of an old-fashioned sensibility, he thinks jewels are for men. And, he sees a resemblance to the grandfather in Hadan Gula's strong features.
Right.
But he can't help but notice the stark contrast in their attire. Arad Gula, a man of substance, never went in for that kind of ostentatious display.
Right. Yeah.
And Sharunada had really hoped
Yeah.
to set Hadangula on a good path,
Yeah.
especially since his father had squandered their inheritance.
Right. Exactly.
So you're hit with this clash
Oh, wow.
between the values of a generation that built wealth
Yeah.
and a younger one that seems to take it for granted.
Right.
And it raises this really important question.
Mm-hmm.
How do different generations see the role of work in achieving and maintaining success?
And that contrast immediately leads to this first kind of collision of their perspectives.
Okay.
So Hidangula, observing Sharunada, always working, always traveling,
Mm-hmm.
asks him, "Why dost thou work so hard? Dost thou never take time to enjoy life?"
Yeah.
And that question, it just lays bare this fundamental difference, right?
Yeah.
In their understanding of what a good life is.
Right. And Sharunada, with this knowing smile,
Yeah.
flips the question back on him. He says, "What wouldst thou do to enjoy life if thou wert Sharunada?" And Hidangula's vision is super revealing.
It is.
He talks about no more desert treks, money just flowing freely, the finest clothes, the rarest jewels. That would be a life to my liking, a life worth living, he says.
It's like a snapshot, right?
Yeah.
Of a mindset that says enjoyment equals consumption.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And it's a classic perspective, right?
Yeah. Of someone who hasn't really experienced that direct link between effort and reward.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of a good life is all about leisure
Yeah.
and acquiring stuff.
Yeah.
No thought about where that wealth comes from.
Right.
Or that deep satisfaction that can come from creating it.
Right.
So right away, it highlights this potential pitfall,
Yeah.
mistaking the results of labor for the true source of fulfillment.
Okay. And then comes this line that really makes you stop and think.
Yeah.
Sharunada, almost as a side note, he mentions that Hadangula's grandfather, he never wore jewels.
Right.
And then, almost jokingly, he says, "Wouldst thou leave no time for work?"
Yeah.
And Hadangula's response, "Work was made for slaves."
Wow.
It's so loaded, that statement.
Yeah, it's huge.
It reveals this ingrained attitude, and this is the core challenge for Sharunada, right?
Absolutely.
How do you instill a sense of value in someone who basically thinks that the thing that leads to growth and achievement is beneath him? It's a tough one.
It is.
And it makes us think, too,
Yeah.
about our own unconscious biases,
Yeah.
about different kinds of work, right?
Right.
How do those shape how we see value and success?
Exactly. And so Sharunada, maybe recognizing that Arguin's not going to get him anywhere right now,
Yeah.
just kind of bites his lip and rides on in silence.
Yeah.
It's this heavy, unspoken disagreement.
Yeah.
And then he tries a different approach. He gestures toward Babylon in the distance and mentions Hadangula's grandfather starting his fortune there.
Right.
But Hadangula's response is to basically complain that his grandfather's not still alive, so they wouldn't be so sorely pressed.
Right.
And he admits straight up that neither he nor his father have figured out his grandfather's secret for attracting the golden shekels.
Right.
He wants that magic formula. He doesn't get the hard work.
It really shows this disconnect, right?
Yeah.
Hadangula sees the outcome,
Yeah.
the wealth, but he totally misses the process.
Yeah.
The hard work, the thrift, the hustle,
Yeah.
the things that actually drove that success.
Mm-hmm.
He's looking for a shortcut,
Yeah.
a secret recipe,
Yeah.
instead of appreciating the value of the journey.
It's like focusing on the destination,
Yeah.
but not understanding the map.
Exactly.
And so right after this, Sharunada spots these 3 old men working in a field.
Okay.
And what's striking to him is this weird sense of familiarity.
Mm-hmm.
He even thinks one does not pass a field after 40 years and find the same men plowing there.
Yeah.
But deep down, he's pretty sure it's them.
Wow.
And this seemingly insignificant observation really triggers this deep reflection for him.
So this is a pivotal moment. And,
Yeah.
like, he sees these men
Yeah.
still doing this backbreaking work after all this time.
Yeah.
One guy, you can tell he's weary, just holding the plow. The others struggling to get the oxen to move.
Yeah.
And he remembers a time 40 years ago when he might have envied them,
Yeah.
their seemingly simple life.
Yeah.
But now
Yeah.
seeing them stuck in the
Yes.
same cycle,
Mm-hmm.
it makes him confront this reality of stagnation.
Yeah.
And what really stands out here is the power of perspective
Yeah.
and how our understanding of what hardship is, it changes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
As we get more experience, as we make progress.
And the contrast really hits him hard. He glances back at his own caravan, huge,
Yeah.
all these valuable goods,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just a fraction of what he owns.
Wow.
And he says to Hadan Gula, kind of seriously, still plowing the same field where they were 40 years ago,
Yeah.
and Hadan Gula kind of brushes it off, doesn't really get it,
Yeah.
and Sharunada just repeats, I saw them there.
Wow.
And this little encounter unlocks all these memories for Sharunada.
Right.
And suddenly, the distance between him and this privileged young man
Yeah.
seems to shrink, as he gets ready to share his own past.
It's a good reminder
Yeah.
that appearances can be deceiving.
Yeah.
And real understanding, it often comes from being vulnerable with each other.
Totally.
It's like seeing that unchanging labor. It shows Sharunada how far he's come.
Yeah.
And maybe what could happen to him
Yeah.
if his path had been different.
Right.
And it makes him even more determined to help Hadan Gula see beyond his limited view.
Mm.
And it's fascinating how an ordinary moment
Yeah.
can cause such a big internal shift
Yeah.
and create space for a deeper connection.
Exactly. But he's still struggling, right?
Yeah.
How do you reach someone with this air of superiority and these spendthrift ideas?
Mm-hmm.
He knows he can offer opportunities to those who are willing to work,
Yeah.
not to someone who looks down on it.
Right.
But he feels this deep obligation to Aradagula
Yeah.
to at least try.
Right.
And then it's like a light bulb goes off, almost in a flash, as he puts it. He pushes aside his own worries
Yeah.
about social standing or how this revelation might be received. He's like, I've got to do this, even if it's uncomfortable.
This really speaks to this idea of recognizing a moral imperative
Yeah.
and being willing to get out of your comfort zone.
Right.
It shows his character.
Exactly.
He's not just a businessman.
Right.
He's got this strong sense of loyalty, of responsibility.
Yeah.
He's willing to risk discomfort to potentially shake things up, right?
Yeah.
All to honor this past connection and try to guide this younger generation.
Right.
It shows that true leadership often means taking tough actions.
Absolutely. So he asks Hadan Gula this pivotal question.
Okay.
Wouldst thou be interested in hearing how thy grandfather and I became such successful partners?
Yeah.
And Hadan Gula, still fixated on the end result,
Yeah.
completely dismisses the journey.
Yeah.
He's like, why not just tell me how thou madest the golden shekels? That is all I need to know.
He wants the cheat code.
Same.
Cares about the game.
But Sharunada wisely,
Yeah.
ignores this impatient request, and
Yeah.
he starts his story by talking about those plowing men.
Right.
He tells Hadan Gula that he was no older than him when he first saw them,
Yeah.
and then he drops this bombshell.
Yeah.
He was marching in a column of chained men,
Wow.
and that instantly, it shatters all of Hadan Gula's assumptions.
Totally. This is the first real crack
Yeah.
in Hadan Gula's idea of Sharunada and his privileged world.
Yeah.
The idea of this respected merchant prince
Yeah.
as a former slave,
Yeah.
totally mind-blowing.
Yeah.
It makes Hadan Gula rethink everything he thought he knew.
Yeah.
It shows how easily we can judge people, right?
Yeah.
Based on what we see
Yeah.
without knowing the struggles they've been through.
Exactly. And then Sharunada introduces us to some key people from that tough time in his life.
Yeah.
There's Megiddo, the farmer, who even in chains couldn't help but criticize the bad plowing.
Yeah.
He was shackled next to Sharunada along with Zabado, the sheep thief, and this guy they called Pirate.
Okay.
And Hadan Gula's just like, in disbelief, thou wert chained as a slave.
Yeah.
And Sharunada confirms it, and then he asks, pointedly,
Yeah.
if his grandfather ever mentioned this part of his story.
Right.
And Hadan Gula says no.
It makes you wonder,
Yeah.
why would Arad Gula keep that quiet?
Yeah.
Maybe to protect Sharunada's reputation
Yeah.
or to focus on his achievements,
Yeah.
not his past hardships.
Yeah.
But it also subtly tests Hadan Gula's character, right? Because Sharunada follows this up
Yeah.
by asking, thou too art a man I may trust, am I not right?
Yeah.
He's not just telling a story.
Right.
He's seeing how Hadan Gula reacts
Yeah.
if he can be empathetic and discreet.
And Hadan Gula, though clearly surprised, assures Sharunada he won't say anything. And then he's like, tell me, how did this even happen?
Yeah.
And Sharunada's explanation, it's a reminder that bad stuff can happen to anyone.
That's true.
His brother made some bad choices,
Yeah.
got in a bar fight, fueled by barley beer,
Right.
ended up bonded to this widow.
Yeah.
And when his father couldn't pay the debt, he was sold.
Wow.
And Hadangula's clearly moved. He's like, that's a shame and injustice. And he wants to know how Sharunada got free.
It shows a little bit of empathy in
Yeah.
him, maybe a turning point in how
Yeah.
he sees fairness and adversity.
Right.
But Sharunada doesn't jump to the resolution yet.
Yeah.
He paints a picture of what he went through.
Yeah.
He describes these free plowers jeering at the chained slaves.
Yeah.
One even gives this cruel, fake welcome to the city walls, where a lot of them are headed.
Right.
It's this stark contrast
Yeah.
between freedom and being a slave. It emphasizes how desperate their situation is and the psychological impact it must have had.
And then Pirate, he explodes, right?
Yeah.
He's furious about this mockery,
Yeah.
and it shows this crucial fork in the road.
Right.
How do you respond to injustice?
Yeah.
Pirate's instinct is rage, violence,
Yeah.
but Megiddo, he's always the practical one.
Yeah.
He offers a different view.
Yeah.
He says that masters value hard workers.
Right.
They're more likely to treat them well.
Right.
And then Zabato, the sheep thief,
Yeah, the lazy one.
he's super cynical,
Right.
thinks the plowers are smart for avoiding hard work.
Yeah.
So right there, you have three reactions to adversity: aggression, diligence, and avoidance.
And Megiddo's words right there.
Yeah.
They're so insightful.
Yeah.
They're really a foundation of the story's wisdom.
Yeah.
He says, "It doesn't make sense to me to talk of masters beating willing, hard-working slaves to death. Masters like good slaves and treat them well." And then he says, "I like to work, and I like to do good work, for work is the best friend I've ever known."
Yeah.
That's deep.
It is.
It's about finding inherent value in work,
Yeah.
no matter what your circumstances are.
Yeah.
And it makes us think, right,
Yeah.
it's our own relationship with the work.
Right.
Beyond just getting paid,
Yeah.
is there more to it?
Exactly. And Megiddo believes that work has given him all the good things in his life.
Yeah.
His farm, his livestock.
Yeah.
And even though he's a slave now, that inherent value is still there.
Yeah.
Zabato, though, he laughs at this.
Of course.
He thinks it's better to be smart and lazy.
Avoid all the effort.
Right. He even fantasizes about getting an easy job,
Yeah.
like carrying water if they
Yeah.
end up on the walls.
Right.
And he imagines Megiddo breaking his back, hauling bricks.
Yeah.
So it's this clear choice: embrace effort or avoid it.
Right.
And it keeps popping up
Yeah.
throughout Sharunada's journey. And in the midst of all this fear, Sharinada is taking in these different attitudes toward labor.
Right.
He's seeing how his fellow captives are mentally preparing
Yeah.
for what awaits them at the slave market.
Yeah.
And then he meets Gadoso, the guard, who
Yeah.
gives him this brief
Yeah.
but crucial piece of advice.
Right.
It's like a glimmer of hope in all this despair. Gadoso tells him to present himself as a willing worker
Right.
to potential buyers.
Yeah.
He says it might be their only shot at a
Yeah.
better fate, a way to avoid the brutal work on the city walls.
Yeah.
And this advice really highlights the importance of agency, even when you feel powerless.
For sure.
Gadosa's blunt. He's like, when buyers come, tell them you good worker, like to work hard for good master, make them want to buy. You not make them buy, next day you carry brick. Mighty hard work.
Wow.
It's straight up no-nonsense advice about the consequences of
Yeah.
seeming unwilling or unable to work.
It's a reminder that perception matters.
Yeah.
Especially when you're competing for something.
Absolutely. And this is a turning point for Sharunada.
Okay.
He thinks about Megiddo's words
Yeah.
about work being his best friend.
Right.
And he starts to think, can I adopt this mindset?
Yeah.
Could this help me get out of this mess?
Yeah.
He starts to see labor not just as a burden,
Yeah.
but as a potential tool for survival, even advancement.
And as they finally reach Babylon,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
the sheer scale of suffering there, it becomes overwhelming.
Yeah.
Thousands of men
Mhm.
toiling on those huge city walls.
Yeah.
They look like black ants from a distance.
Yeah.
Laboring under this relentless sun with these cruel overseers.
Mm.
It's a horrifying scene.
Yeah.
And Sharunada, he sees the reality of forced labor
Mhm.
and what happens to those who can't keep up.
Right.
It shows the stakes at the slave market.
Yeah.
For him and the other captives. It's brutal.
It is.
The way the overseers use those whips.
Yeah.
The bodies of those who's collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
It paints this stark picture
Yeah.
of the brutality.
Yeah.
It's not just about losing freedom.
Right.
It's a threat to their lives.
Yeah.
And it makes it so urgent for Sharunada
Yeah.
to stand out,
Yeah.
to find a decent master.
And at the market, while a lot of the captives are huddled together,
Yeah.
scared and resigned,
Mm-hmm.
Sharonada and Megiddo take a different approach.
Yeah.
They try to make eye contact with the buyers,
Yeah.
presenting themselves as strong, willing workers, just
Yeah.
like Gadoso said.
Mm-hmm.
And we see how badly Pirate's treated
Yeah.
when he resists.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that fighting back won't work here.
It's a tough lesson.
It is.
And Megiddo, even facing his own unknown future,
Yeah.
he takes the time to give Sharonada some advice
Yeah.
about the value of hard work.
Yeah, he tells him, better to treat it like a friend, make thyself like it. Don't mind, because it is hard. Remember, work, well done, does good to the man who does it. It makes him a better man. It's this idea that hard work has its own rewards beyond just the material stuff.
Right.
It helps you grow as a person.
Yeah,
And Megiddo's attitude, it pays off.
it does.
He convinces this farmer to buy him.
Yeah.
And Sharonada sees this
Right.
little victory in the midst of all the despair.
Yeah.
And he's even more determined to do the same. And then this baker, Nananade,
Yeah.
he asks if any of the slaves have baking experience.
Right.
And Sharonada, he's never baked a loaf of bread in his life,
Yeah.
but he jumps at the chance.
Yeah.
He says it would be more efficient to train a young guy like him,
Mm-hmm.
emphasizing his youth, his strength, his eagerness to learn and earn money.
It's smart.
It is.
It shows how resourceful he is,
Yeah.
even in this awful situation.
He's thinking on his feet.
Totally.
Yeah.
And Nananade is impressed
Yeah.
by his enthusiasm and how persuasive he is.
Yeah.
So he buys him.
Yeah.
And life as a baker's apprentice, it's way better.
Yeah.